Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses in New York if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So, I had a question today about how to use VAs, virtual assistants, for cold calling. So, a couple of questions. It was a series of questions. How do you monitor them? How do you make sure they're doing things right? How do you keep on pace? What's the hit rate? And how do you set appointments, putting together a deal? All right, a lot of things here. So, let's talk about what you should do. So, I'm not talking about hiring. This light looks terrible. I'm not talking about hiring. Wow, that was bad. To hiring VAs right now. We're talking about how once you found the VA you think is going to be a good cold caller, what do you do? So here's the key. The key is that you have to listen to them over the phone for the first, I would say, at least 2 weeks every day. You also have to understand that they're going to stink in the beginning. Most people are terrible when they start. I was terrible when I started, and when you started, probably terrible too. So you have to give them some leeway, but you want to make sure that they have a good script. And anybody who wants my script, you can shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to send you a copy of my script. My script, I think, is awesome. You want them to follow the script. Like, I have a VA right now, cold caller is great, but he wasn't following the order, and that's a big deal, right? The order of my script is really important. So you got to listen to them, and you have to track them. So you hopefully they're using a predictive dialer, right? I'm a big Zen call fan, XEN call. So I can check how many hours they're on the dialer and see how they're doing. So that's how you know that they're actually working. You can also use HubStaff if you want. I use HubStaff for some of my VAs just to see what they're looking at on their screens, because it takes a screenshot of them every 5 minutes. But you want to listen to them, and you want to give them constructive criticism at least 2 weeks, probably more, probably 3 or 4 weeks. And then so the way to do that is to go through all their calls, find the calls that are the longest duration, right? You don't want to get the calls where they just left a message or something like that. And I even tell them not to leave messages, but for people that they haven't spoken to yet. But you want them to, so you want the longest calls, and you want to go through the call, and you want to be constructive, and you want to say, listen, here, I think you should have said that. Here, you should have realized this is not a deal. Here, and you talk to them, and that's how you do it. And you do that for a while. And I promise you, after 2 to 3 weeks, you'll know if this person has a future in cold calling or not. If you listen to all their calls where they're making. Now, as for hit rate, I'll give you my basic stats on Zen Call. They usually connect about 150 times a day. What are the numbers? I'm looking for my phone. I'm recording this on my phone. And I try to get 1 to 2 leads a day from 150 connections, right? They'll have about 50 sort of conversations and try to get 1 to 2 leads a day. Those are my basic rates that they're looking for. But that's what you want to do. If a guy is getting you 1 to 2 leads a day, he's a keeper, right? Unless those leads turn out to be crap. Obviously, you have to check those leads. You have to listen to those calls and see what the story is. Now, as for setting appointments, so in Zen Call, you can just set an appointment with Zen Call. So sometimes I'll set the appointment, but he doesn't have access to my calendar. I can give him access to my calendar. I can integrate Zen Call with my calendar. He just sets the appointment, and I usually just call them back and see if and I requalify. That's with that cold call. The other cold callers do have access to my calendar, and they'll set an appointment when there's an open period of time in my calendar. That's how I would recommend you do it. But again, I've gone through a lot of bad cold callers. Most cold callers stink. You have to really know. Maybe I should do a video on how to hire a cold caller, which almost everything I've gotten from is from Jason Lewis out in Utah. He's awesome with these things. He has, I think, 40 or 50 VAs working for him. This whole guy works out of his pajamas and has 1 million people working from all over the world for him. He's awesome. But he's given me a lot of good things to do. And there are questions you should ask. I'll just give you a couple now. One of the things I asked, so if you ask a Philippine VA if they can do anything, they'll always say yes. If you could say, hey, can you lift 10,000 pounds with one hand? They'll say yes. They say yes to everything. So you can't ask them yes or no questions when it comes, because they always will say they'll do it, and they always figure they'll figure it out. But what I say is, if I have 3 different tasks and I want you to rank them 1, 2, and 3, the first is making outbound calls, the second is taking inbound calls, and the third is doing administrative research work on a computer. How would you rank them 1, 2, and 3? If they say making outbound calls is number 3, it usually means they are not a good cold caller, right? It could be 2 if inbound calls is number 1. But if they say they'd rather do research on the computer and then take inbound calls number 2, and number 3 is making outbound calls, I usually think that's not what they want to do. So I would recommend doing something like that. It doesn't have to be that. And I say that because I have VAs who take inbound calls, and I have VAs who do research online. So I would say it's very important to ask a lot of questions. When you hire, maybe I'll do a whole video on hiring, but once you hire, the way to make sure they're on track is to listen to their calls, listen to their longest duration calls, and see what's going on. But I had somebody once I called, and his longest duration calls were him like humming to a voicemail machine. So sometimes they're not working, right? You need to make sure that they're working. So always go look for the longest duration calls, and look for about 150 connections a day, between 100 and 150, and really most importantly, 1 to 2 leads a day. And if you all the other, people get really trimmed down the metrics and tell me they need to make a certain amount of connections. If a guy's getting you 1 to 2 decent leads a day, 5 to 10 leads a week, he's a superstar cold caller, and I would say don't ever let him go, him or her. So that's it, right? I had somebody who was asking me about all the metrics and how this whole thing works, and that he had a cold caller was getting him 2 to 3 leads a day, and I'm like, that's gold. Don't get bogged down in stupid stats. So that's how you track it. You track it by listening to the calls and giving them constructive criticism every single day, and you make a time for it. So say, tomorrow between 9 and 9:30, I'm going to call you, or you call me, and we're going to go over yesterday's calls. Telling them that is a big deal. First of all, it makes them feel better. Very often they don't know what the hell they're supposed to be doing. So even if you have a good training program, it's still unlikely that they know if they're doing a good job or not. And they want to do a good job because they want to keep getting paid. So when you make time to go over that with them, and you make it clear that you're not trying to berate them or be angry at them, and you should never do that, you just want them to get better, they have a much better relationship with you, a much more likely chance that they'll stick with you, and much more likely chance that you'll have a better cold caller and get more leads. So that's pretty much how it works when it comes to a VA cold call. Now, I want to just reiterate that I believe everyone should be making cold calls themselves before they hire a VA to do that. And I know people say, well, I'm not good over the phone, I have an accent, I'm not good. Whatever it is, you should. I believe you should start, because it's hard to know how to teach somebody what to do if you haven't done it yourself. And that's a big factor that people don't realize. Outsourcing is great, but in order to outsource something successfully, you need to be able to determine whether that outsourced person is doing a good job or not. And if you have no idea what a good call is versus a bad call, you're not going to be able to give the feedback that we've been discussing this whole video, right? You need to tell them, hey, this is what you should do. This is the direction you should go. And if you don't know how to do that, it's going to be very difficult for you to give that feedback. And you could just find yourself 4 months later with no leads, and you didn't realize that it was because the guy was saying something stupid in the beginning of the script. So there's a huge cultural change. My cold callers are in the Philippines. I have some expats I've used who call for me in Costa Rica, but there's a huge cultural shift between Philippines and the United States, and you need to explain things to them just so they learn. And it's not their fault that they don't know how things work in the United States. It's just that the culture is extremely different. So the way to be on top of your cold callers is to listen to their longest duration calls every single day for at least 2 weeks, better for 4 weeks, and give them constructive criticism on how it's done. The only way to know how it's done is by making the calls yourself for at least a month or two, so that you can tell the difference between a good call and a bad call. I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in how I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're interested in my course, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you're interested in coaching, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. What else? If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Whatever platform you're watching on, if you can please click like. The thumbs up really helps my SEO, my search engine optimization, and it allows a lot more people to see these videos, and it's been very helpful for me lately. So I really appreciate everybody liking it. And please keep the comments coming. This came from a comment I got, I think, today. There are no stupid questions or comments. So if you ask me something simple, I will, and it's a simple answer, I'll just respond with an answer. If you ask me something that's, somebody asked me something today about creative financing. I sent him 2 videos on that that I've done on creative financing. So I don't need to go over it again. I might handle that topic in the future, but I wasn't wanting to do it today. And if it's something I haven't handled like this, I don't think I've ever talked about this topic before, where we're talking about how to monitor cold calling of virtual assistants. So I think that's very good. And keep the comments coming. If it's something new, I'll do a video on it. So thank you very much, John, for the suggestion. And thank you all for watching.